thank you so much for joining us. It's episode 125 on the Adrian podcast featuring the fabulous Troy Malcolm. How are you today, Troy?
I love that. I was waiting for you to see what you were going to say there, but AB, mate, I'm really well. Thank you for having me again on your podcast. Congratulations. I got a screenshot sent to me of the podcast numbers, not only of the listeners per week, but also the ranking, both on Spotify and also Apple. And it's full credit to you, Adrian. I think you've got a really good formula for success. I think that the listeners are very clear in what they want to see from podcasts these days. And I think the formula that you've created is something that I'm very, very happy and humbled to be part of. So thanks again for having me. Episode number 125. I remember episode 1 like it was yesterday. And today's session is a little bit kind of similar to that in many ways, Adrian. You know, we ride the roller coaster of real estate and business and life in general. And one common thing that I've seen recently, people have come back from Christmas and they somewhat are feeling still a little bit tired, lethargic, frustrated, unfulfilled, not knowing what the future holds for their role, for their business, for their future companies, or what that may look like for them. And I thought it'd be a really interesting topic if we can. And I know that you posted this recently as one of your tip of the week to your Academy members. And I know that it's an important one, but you know, why are we frustrated, Adrian? Why are we feeling unfulfilled? And what do you know? How are we going to overcome that? And I know that you've got a very simple formula that just makes complete sense of this. And I'm going to just leave it over to you to obviously talk about why we feel that way, but also the formula and how it's worked for you as an advantage in your business and your life.
Yeah, thanks, Troy. So this is a really important topic because when you look at all the aspects of our life, and there's not that many, Troy, there's health, there's wealth, there's career, there's relationships, there's social, and effect and spirituality. They're the key fundamental core areas of anyone's life. Now, if you look at the reasons why we feel unfulfilled, and let's call it work. Let's just look at the work section of our actual life. Let's say that we're just feeling unfulfilled, unhappy, unsatisfied, and overly frustrated. Now, this applies to all of these areas. However, the one formula that served me extremely well, Troy, has been that either your core beliefs, okay, meet your current reality or they don't. Now, let's unpack that a little bit because that sounds, you know, too rudimentary and too simple to be accurate and effective. But when you look at, say, your career or your work situation, let's say you're not where you want to be in your career. Well, that's called your current reality, your current situation. And the reason you're frustrated or not where you want to be is because why? It's not meeting your expectations or your core belief. So my simple formula also has a very simple solution or prescription, if you like. And it's quite binary, Troy. It's either one or the other. Either adjust your expectations or change your current situation. And you might be thinking, that sounds ridiculously rudimentary and simple as well. But the same could be said about a relationship that you're in, whether it's a friendship or whether it's with your spouse. And you might be thinking, I just don't feel happy or fulfilled. Well, that's your current reality. So you've either got to change that current reality or adjust your expectations. Then you look at health, another area. It's like, I've never really got rid of that extra 3 kilos that I've been wanting to do for 7 years, right? Well, either adjust your expectations or change it tomorrow. Like, you can actually achieve what you want to achieve in the next 10 days if you're really serious about it. So you can see how the same could be said about spirituality. The same could be said about your social life. If you're really frustrated in your social life because you're doing too many things or not enough things, well, you've just got an unrealistic expectation for yourself and your current reality or current situation is not meeting it. So your current situation is your current reality, and your expectations is what your core beliefs are. And if there's a clash, that's what creates the frustration, the unfulfillment, and the unhappiness, Troy. So the solution is very binary. Either change your current reality or adjust your expectations.
Yeah, and Adrian, I guess the way that I always have worked this for you, because I know that we've done this with certain groups that we've coached and trained and mentored over both of our careers, and collectively with a lot of individual agents. I think the best way for people to really understand where they currently feel they're at is to write down those key areas. So write down health, write down wealth, write down career, spirituality, relationships, and your social aspects, the ones that you just focused on, and actually scale them from 1 to 10. Like, give yourself a ranking out of 1 to 10 for all of those. Now, you and I, Adrian, we have a bit of a formula for this as well. No one is at a 10 because, let's face it, no one is a Jedi master of their own being. There's always a little bit more that you can put into your cup. Also, no one's a 0 because everyone has a pulse, right? So you're somewhere between that 1 or 2 up to 9. And so where you sit in that formula is really indicative. Now, for most of them, you're probably sitting maybe at a 5 or a 6, and then you'll notice there's one that's at a 2 or a 3. You'll see a development over the year if you start to really focus on those areas of your life. But the ones that are ranking less than a 5, it's probably best to say to focus on them as a priority, because there's a reason why you've rated yourself as a self-assessment at that level, and you'll see the greatest gain in your holistic approach to life, and you'll get a lot more fulfillment if you focus on the areas that maybe you're underperforming by your self-assessment, and you can bring them up in line or even exceeding the ones that are rating around that 4, 5, or 6 kind of area. Adrian, this has worked really well for so many of our clients, and I know that it's something that you're very focused on. And when you think about not only the skills and the training that you deliver in the academy, what you're doing in your live sessions, it also goes really closely with the book that you've obviously just released. And I know that we covered off a lot of detail of that in one of our previous episodes, but this does all tie together. And so most people, when they're talking about success as a successful real estate agent and a sales agent, it actually comes down to these things first and foremost before they can even get their head right to represent clients. And I think that's what a lot of agents seem to miss along the way. Maybe they've plateaued, maybe they've dropped off, or maybe on that fast run and they feel like everything's out of control. What are your tips around that side of it to make sure that they don't go off track, or they don't ride the roller coaster of being fulfilled, unfulfilled, feeling, comfortable within their relationships and their spirituality, to having no relationships or really bad spirituality?
Yeah. Look, you've nailed it, Troy, in that what this process is, if people that are listening and watching this want to undertake, is effectively a self-audit. Let's face it, that's what it is. It's a personal audit, self-audit. So you look at those areas of your life: health, wealth, relationships, spirituality, career, and social and relationships. You look at all those areas and you do that self-audit like you've just said. Now, the solution, as I've suggested, is very binary. There's no gray area here, Troy. You either need to change your current situation or you need to adjust your expectations. Otherwise, this constant unfulfillment and unhappiness and uncontentment will fester and fester. And guess what? This doesn't just fester for months. It festers for years, if not decades. So do the self-audit, guys, and do it quickly and make one of those adjustments. Now, people listening to this or watching are saying, but this is a real estate podcast. True. So let's consider those chapters of your life as global areas of your life, and let's double click on the work or career one. And then let's look at, what's your listing appointment look like? Are you fulfilled with your listing appointment skills? If not, rate yourself, do a self-audit, and look at, are your expectations of what you want to deliver at that listing matching your current reality? Meaning, what is your current listing pitch look like? If it doesn't match your expectations, either adjust your expectations or learn how to produce a better listing appointment. Then do a buyer conversation, or then look at a prospecting session. then look at a set to sell meeting, then look at a business plan. Look at everything to do with your career and where you're at. And then you might even consider, what's your social media game look like, right? Does current reality equal or not equal your expectations? Yeah. Now, that's going to get you a little bit more of a deeper dive into real estate. But I must say, Troy, as you know, I'm all about, and so are you, holistic success. Yeah. You cannot just look at your career or work in isolation, because let me tell you, if health's off, if spirituality's off, if your relationships are off, your social life is off, then let me tell you, it will affect your work. So they're not mutually exclusive. There's a symbiotic relationship between all of them, Troy. So let's do a global self-audit on all the key areas, and let's take a deep dive in particularly with work and look at all those subcategories, if you like: prospecting, listing, set to sell, social media, business planning, whatever it might be, and do an audit. Now, if you invest half an hour, 20 minutes in doing this, you could actually save yourself years of frustration, make yourself more money, feel more fulfilled, have better quality of relationships with your friends and family, and have better connections with your clients as well. So why wouldn't you do it?
I think the other important thing to make mention here, Adrian, is that it actually takes away the comparison side of it. So you're not actually chasing someone else that may be on their chapter 30 or 40, where you're still starting out in your career, or they may be 3 or 4 years ahead. So we do always say that comparison is the thief of joy. And I think fulfillment and joy go very close together. So when you take away that comparison because you're playing and competing against yourself as opposed to someone else that may be on a totally different trajectory than you, I think that does make a lot of sense. And I think it does enable our agents to be quite content with the path that they're following through. Now, the other good thing is, Adrian, you're putting together an instruction playbook. So you actually know, like, if you want to fast track your success, but you want to stay in balance, well, you just skip ahead, right? You can really fast track your success as opposed to always thinking, what's the next thing coming out? How am I going to do that? How am I going to overcome that agent? How am I going to, there's a new brand that's released or whatever that is. I think that's really important as well. Once you have this framework, it actually takes away that comparison for you.
Absolutely. And what we're giving permission for the listeners to do, Troy, is on occasion reduce your expectations. Because if you've been hitting your head against a brick wall for 4 years on health, wealth, spirituality, relationships, whatever it might be, and it's just not working, well, you may need to adjust your expectations. Now, is that demotivating? No. Will adjusting your expectations potentially create a more sensible and realistic target? Yes. I'll give you the perfect example, Troy. Sat with one of my coaching clients at the beginning of this year, and he asked me, right, so what's the goal in terms of volume of sales? And I said 80. And he said, oh, I was thinking 100. I said, okay, I'm hearing you. What goal did I give you last year? And he said 40. How many did we sell last year? He said 57. I said to him, do you think at the beginning of last year, if I gave you a target of 57, that could have sounded slightly overwhelming and therefore be counterproductive? He said, yes. I said, does 100 sound overwhelming to you right now as we say it? He said, yes. I said, great. 80 is the number. And if we do 100, guess what? It's probably because we created a target of 80 and we didn't feel overwhelmed every day. And we not only achieved it, but actually exceeded it. So let's be sensible, pragmatic, and realistic with our expectations. And therefore, we don't feel pressured every single day to chase an arbitrary target that may not have ever been there to begin with. But guess what? Because we're dealing with it in weekly accountability chunks, which is what we do, then it's going to seem a lot more sensible and realistic. So that is a real life example of exactly what we're talking about, Troy.
Yeah, it's perfect. Adrian, this is such an important topic, and I know that it's very much a passion of yours to make sure that people get this right before they move on to any of those other subcategories that we discussed. If people want to reach out and find out more information, you've got a number of key areas and learnings that you have on your academy and also in your book that cover off a couple of these things. They can obviously also reach out to you directly. You're doing a lot of one-on-one coaching with a really high group of highly talented and high performance agents throughout all of Australia. So for anyone that's listening to this that's really resonating, make sure you do reach out to Adrian. It's a phenomenal opportunity to get this right. And Adrian, the timing actually is right. It's not too late in the year. It's actually probably early in the fact that you can prepare for the next financial year if you work to that cycle. We're coming to the end of January. We're coming into Feb. So there's a lot of opportunity for people, even if they haven't looked at this since the start of their last calendar year or financial year. It's a really good time to re-engage and make sure. And like you said, Adrian, 20 minutes now, half an hour, whatever the time is that you spend, you might actually fast track your success 3, 4, 5, 6 years on the basis of just knowing what you're actually trying to achieve and being fulfilled in every part of your business. Adrian, episode number 125. I can't wait. The 150 is on the way, right? We're 25 episodes away from 150. I know that we've got a number of special guest lines up. I know also that we have a number of questions that have come in over the Christmas break. We're just trying to formulate the best way to put those together, combine a few questions so we can have those episodes. We do want to keep on topic. We've got a lot of information that we want to share as we move into 2022 to make sure that every one of our listeners has their best year ever as a real estate professional, not only in Australia, but throughout the world. We know we get a lot of listeners throughout New Zealand and the UK. So shout out to our followers over there as well. As always, this episode will be going live on all your favorite podcast channels. Make sure you send through any questions you have directly to Adrian or myself via our social channels. We love getting those questions, love getting the feedback. AB, final thoughts before we wrap up episode number 125?
I just think this is a critical process to undertake. Self-audit is what we're calling it. And let me tell you, the sooner you do it, the sooner that you'll feel less frustrated, more fulfilled, and you'll have less blockages in your life. So my strong recommendation is start with those global points we talked about, and then look at those subcategories, certainly within your work or career to start with, and then the others subsequently.
Perfect. Team, thanks so much for joining us again for another episode of the Adrian Bo podcast featuring Troy Malcolm. Can't wait to see you next week for episode number 126. Thanks, AB.
Thanks, Troy. Thanks, listeners.